Dear students, welcome to Lalsa's classes. In this particular video, we are going to understand Deep Water by William Douglas. This lesson is prescribed for 12th class English Core CBSE board. Now, let's see something about the author. William Orwell Douglas was born in 1898 in the USA. He was a leading advocate of individual rights. He was a judge at the Supreme Court of USA, retired in 1975 with a term lasting 36 years and remains the longest serving justice in the history of the court. He died in 1980. The lesson is an excerpt taken from Of Men and Mountains by William O. Douglas. Now let's see the main NCERT text which is there in the lesson. It had happened when I was 10 or 11 years old. I had decided to learn to swim. There was a pool at the YMCA in the Yakima that offered exactly opportunity. The Yakima River was treacherous. Now if you see glossary will go on clearing it paragraph wise. YMCA, Young Men's Christian Association, Yakima, a place of Washington, USA, the Yakima River also. Treacherous, dangerous. Mother continually warned against it and kept fresh in my mind the details of his drowning in the river. But the YMCA pool was safe. It was only 2 or 3 feet deep at the shallow end, and while it was 9 feet deep at the other, the drop was gradual. I got a pair of water wings and went to the pool. I hated to walk naked into it and show my skinny legs, but I subdued my pride and did it. If you see here, the drop slope from the shallow area of the deep area. Check shallow area to the deep area. Now water wings, a pair of inflatable waterproof bags designed so that one can be attached to each arm, especially of a child learning to swim. Skinny, thin here. Subdued, to overcome. Pride, self-respect of an individual being talked about. Now the next paragraph reads like this. From the beginning, however, I had an aversion to the water when I was in it. This started when I was 3 or 4 years old, and father took me to the beach in California. He and I stood together in the surf. I hung on to him, yet the waves knocked me down and swept over me. I was buried in water. My breath was gone. I was frightened. Father laughed, but there was terror in my heart at the overpowering force of the waves. Now let's understand some words here. Aversion is dislike. Surf, waves of the sea, waves of water. Now knocked me down, threw the poet down. Next paragraph. My introduction to the YMCA swimming pool revived unpleasant memories and stirred childish fears. But in a little while I gathered confidence. I paddled with my new water wings, watching the other boys and trying to learn by aping them. I did this 2 or 3 times on different days and was just beginning to feel at ease in the water when the misadventure happened. Now the author is coming to the major misadventure that happened with him. Here, let's understand some glossary. Revived, brought back to mind, aping, copying of course, imitating as well. To feel at ease, to feel comfortable. The next paragraph reads like, I went to the pool when no one else was there. The place was quiet, the water was still, and the tiled bottom was as white and clean as a bathtub. I was timid about going in alone, so I sat on the side of the pool to wait for others. I had not been there long when in came a big bruiser of a boy, probably 18 years old. He had thick hair on his chest. He was a beautiful physical specimen with legs and arms that showed rippling muscles. He yelled, Hi Skinny, how would you like to be tugged? Let's understand the glossary here. Bruiser, a person who is tough and aggressive and enjoys a fight or argument. Specimen, example, skinny, a thin person, ducked, push or plunge someone under water. The next paragraph. With that, he picked me up and tossed me into the deep end. I landed in a sitting position, swallowed water, and went at once to the bottom. I was frightened, but not yet frightened out of my wits. On the way down, I planned, when my feet hit the bottom, I would make a big jump, come to the surface, lie flat on it, and paddle to the edge of the pool. Now this was his plan while going down into the water. Here the meaning, glossary, tossed through, which intelligence, wit and wisdom here talking about in the context. Next paragraph reads like this. It seemed a long way down. Those 9 feet were more like 90, and before I touched the bottom, my lungs were ready to burst. But when my feet hit bottom, I summoned all my strength and made what I thought was a great spring upwards. I imagined I would bob to the surface like a cork. Instead, I came up slowly. I opened my eyes and saw nothing but water, water that had a dirty yellow tinge to it. I grew panicky. I reached up as if to grab a rope, and my hands clutched only at water. I was suffocating. I tried to yell, but no sound came out. Then my eyes and nose came out of the water, but not my mouth. Let's have a glossary here again. Summoned, gathered, collected. Spring, push. Bob, it goes for jump. Tinge, touch of color. Suffocating, unable to breathe due to lack of air. Yell, scream. I flailed at the surface of water, swallowed and choked. I tried to bring my legs up, but they hung as dead weights, paralyzed and rigid. A great force was pulling me under. I screamed, but only the water heard me. I had started on the long journey back to the bottom of the pool. Now he again started going to the bottom because the gravitational pull was pulling him down. Now glossary, flailed, waved his hands, choked, unable to breathe, rigid, hard. The next paragraph reads like this. I struck at the water as I went down, expending my strength as one in a nightmare fights an irresistible force. It is irresistible force. I had lost all my breath. My lungs ached. My head throbbed. I was getting dizzy. But I remembered the strategy. I would spring from the bottom of the pool and come like a cork on the surface. I would lie flat on the water, strike out with my arms, and thrash with my legs. Then I would get to the edge of the pool and be safe. Now that was his plan. He was reviving again. Now let's see the glossary. Expending. It is losing, giving out. Ached, pained, throbbed, felt pain in series of beats. Now dizzy, faint, unsteady, a kind of nausea you can see. A strategy, plan of action, strike out, extend, thrash, hit with force. Next paragraph reads like this. I went down, down endlessly. I opened my eyes. Nothing but water with a yellow glow. Dark water that one could not see through. And then sheer stark terror seized me. Terror that knows no understanding. Terror that knows no control. Terror that no one can understand who has not experienced it. It was shrieking underwater. I was paralyzed underwater, stiff, rigid and with fear. Even the screams in my throat were frozen. Only my heart and the pounding in my head said that I was still alive. So the next paragraph, before we go to the next paragraph, let's understand the glossary here. Stark, severe, seized, gripped, shrieking, screaming, paralyzed, incapable of movement, pounding, repeated beating, and then in the midst of terror came a touch of reason. So this touch of reason is he is thinking something. I must remember to jump when I hit the bottom. At last I felt the tiles under me. My toes reached out as if to grab them. I jumped with everything I had, jumping upward. Now, in the midst of means in between. Next paragraph reads like this. But the jump made no difference. The water was still around me. I looked for ropes, ladders, water wings. Nothing but water. A mass of yellow water held me. Stark terror took an even deeper hold on me. Like a great charge of electricity, I shook and trembled with fright. My arms would not move. My legs would not move. I tried to call for help, to call for mother. Nothing happened. And then, strangely, there was light. I was coming out of the awful yellow water. At least my eyes were. My nose was almost out too. Next paragraph reads like this. I started down a third time. So this is the third time. I sucked for air and got water. The yellowish light was going out. Then all efforts ceased. I relaxed. Even my legs felt limp, and a blackness swept over my brain. It wiped out fear. It wiped out terror. There was no more panic. Now this is the process of getting unconscious. This is being explained by the author very nicely. It was quiet and peaceful. Nothing to be afraid of. This is nice. To be drowsy. To go to sleep. No need to jump. Too tired to jump. It's nice to be carried gently. To float along in space. Tender arms around me. Tender arms like mother's. Now I must go to sleep. Now the glossary. Ceased, ended. The yellow sea is that is catch hold of SEIZ. This is CEASED, ended. Now lame, lifeless. I crossed to oblivion and the curtain of life fell, means he became unconscious. Let's understand the glossary. Oblivion, the state of being unaware of, unconscious of what is happening around one. Curtain of life fell, life came to an end. The next, I remember I was lying on my stomach beside the pool, vomiting. The chap that threw me in was saying, but I was only fooling. Someone said, the kid nearly died. Be alright now, let's carry him to the locker room. The next paragraph reads like this. Several hours later, I walked home. I was weak and trembling. I shook and cried when I lay on my bed. I could not eat that night. For days a haunting fear was in my heart. The slightest exertion upset me, making me wobbly in the knees and sick to my stomach. Wobbly, weak. Next paragraph. I never went back to the pool. I feared water. I avoided it whenever I could. A few years later, when I came to know the waters of cascades, I wanted to get into them. And whenever I did, whether I was wading the Triton or bumping river or bathing in warm lake of the goat rocks, the terror that had seized me in the pool would come back. It would take possession of me completely. My legs would become paralyzed. Icy horror would grab my heart. Now, at this junction, we come to understand that the author has developed a hydrophobia. Hydrophobia is the fear of water. Now, cascades, waterfall. The next paragraph reads like this. This handicap stayed with me as the years rolled by. In canyons of Maine lakes, fishing for landlocked salmon, bass fishing in New Hampshire, trout fishing on the Deschutes and Metalius, or Oregon fishing for salmon on Columbia, at Bumping Lake in the Cascades. Whenever I went, the haunting fear of the water followed me. It ruined my fishing trips, deprived me of the joy of canoeing, boating and swimming. Handicap, let's understand the meaning here. Handicap, a circumstance that makes progress or success difficult. Now, canoes, small boats, ruined, destroyed, deprived, to take away, goes. The next paragraph reads like this. I used every way I knew to overcome this fear, but it held me firmly in its grip. Finally, one October, I decided to get an instructor and learn to swim. You see, where there is a will, there is a way. It is rightly said. The author has experienced at this junction that he is losing a lot from his life, and because of that he decided to learn swimming by hiring an instructor. So next he says, I went to a pool and practiced 5 days a week, an hour each day. The instructor put a belt around me. A rope attached to the belt went through a pulley that ran on an overhead cable. He held on to the end of the rope and we went back and forth across the pool, hour after hour, day after day, week after week. On each trip across the pool, a bit of the panic seized me. Each time the instructor relaxed his hold on the rope and I went under, some of the old terror returned and my legs froze. It was 3 months before the tension began to slack. Then he taught me to put my face under water and exhale, and to raise my nose and inhale. I repeated the exercise hundreds of times. Bit by bit, I shed part of the panic that seized me when my head went under water. Now, the glossary in this case is slack, to reduce, ward off. Shed, removed, panic, fear, seized, gripped. Now here, next paragraph reads like this. Next, he held me at the side of the pool and had me kick with my legs. Now for weeks, I did just that. At first my legs refused to work, but they gradually relaxed, and finally I could command them. Thus, piece by piece, he built a swimmer, and when he perfected each piece, he put them together into an integrated whole. In April, he said, "Now you can swim." So, we must remember that the author began this practice of learning swimming in October, and now in April. So, how many months? October, November, December, January, Feb, March, April. Almost 7 months it took, for him to learn. Dive off and swim the length of the pool, crawl, stroke. Now, these were the words of the instructor. Now, let's understand what is the meaning of stroke here. A particular style of moving the arms and legs in swimming. The next paragraph reads like this. But it says, the instructor was finished, but I was not finished. I still wondered if I would be terror stricken when I was alone in the pool. I tried it. I swam the length up and down. Tiny vestiges of the old terror would return. But now I could frown and say to that terror, trying to scare me, well, here is to you, look. And off I would go for another length of the pool. Now let's understand the meaning of vestiges here. Traces, remains. Now the next paragraph reads like this. This went on until July, but I was still not satisfied. I was not sure that all the terror had left. So I went to the lake Wentworth in New Hampshire, dived off a dock at Triggs Island and swam 2 miles across the lake of Stampact Island. I swam the crawl, breaststroke, side stroke and backstroke. So these are the forms of swimming he is talking about. Only once did the terror return. When I was in the middle of the lake, I put my face under and saw nothing but bottomless water. The old sensation returned in miniature. I laughed and said, "Well, Mr. Terror, what do you think you can do to me?" It fled and I swam on. Now let's understand miniature, small size. Okay. Next paragraph reads like this. Yet I had residual doubts, means remaining doubts. At my first opportunity, I hurried west, went up to Titan to Conrad Meadows, up to the Conrad Creek Trail to Mead Glacier, and camped in the high meadows by the side of Warm Lake. The next morning I stripped, dived into the lake and swam across to the other shore and back, just as Dog Corporon used to. Now this Dog Corporon, one of the great swimmers at that time, he is mentioning here, I shouted with joy, and Gilbert Peak returned to the echo. I had conquered my fear of water. Now here we find that the author has conquered his fear of water. Yet I had residual doubts. At my first opportunity I hurried west unto Titan, that we have seen. So all we have to, now when he talks about, All we have to fear is fear itself. This is very important sentence of this lesson, because I had experienced both the sensation. Now when he is mentioning about this sentence, we must remember that this sentence is spoken by Roosevelt, one of the presidents of the USA. Because I had experienced both the sensation of dying and the terror that fear of it can produce, the will to live somehow grew intensely. Okay. Now at last I felt release, free to walk the trails and climb the peaks and to brush aside the fear. So we find in this lesson that the author has gone at length to talk about how he developed hydrophobia and how he overcame it. Now point to remember here is there is a big punchline here. The students can utilize while writing long answer type questions or even in shorter answer type when the opportunity strikes. The first one, there is no fear. Fear is just a kind of thought in our mind. Okay, it doesn't have a physical structure, right? And we can also say that the more we run away from our fear, the more it haunts us, as we saw in this lesson. The next punchline, very important for learning process. The learning takes place when we have the will to do it. When we have the willing to learn, it will certainly take place. Very important. Now, NCERT question, think as you read, what is the misadventure that William Douglas speaks about? When he was just in the process of getting comfortable with the water at the YMCA pool, the misadventure happened. One day, an 18-year-old big bruiser picked him up and tossed him into the 9 feet deep end of the pool. He hit the water surface in a ascending position. He swallowed water and went at once to the bottom. He nearly died in this misadventure. This misadventure is being talked about by the author. Now, like this, I have provided all the model answers to the short answer type questions. I will be discussing a few here. One model answer and short answer type question, that is 30 to 40 words, I have already discussed. Now let's go to the long answer type in this chapter. If we talk about the NCERT questions, there are two types of questions, rather three. Think while you read, that is one, and then understanding the text. These two types are short answer type questions. The students should not try more than 30 to 40 words, approximately 40 words. That is the maximum limit. Now talking about this long answer type question, we have 150 words maximum, 120 words approximately to 150 words. Let's see first model answer that I have tried for the students. All we have to fear is fear itself. Have you ever had a fear that you have now overcome? Share your experience with your partner. Now in this case, I must remind you students that this answer will have a multiple type of answers. Okay, this question will have a multiple type of answers. I must have been about 8 or 9 years old. It was the night of Diwali. All the houses were shining bright with the rows of candles, oil lamps and electric bulbs. Children were bursting crackers. Suddenly, a cracker went up and hit the thatched roof of a poor gardener. Soon the hut was in flames. His only son, a tiny infant, had severe burns before he could be rescued. I began to tremble with fear as the police questioned the boy's exploding crackers. From then on, I had a fear of crackers, fire and police. My parents and I had to work very hard to remove this blemish on me. I was adversely affecting my personality. By learning the safeguards against fire, safe handling of crackers, I gradually overcame my fear. So again, I would like to remind that when you realize that you are missing some events of life, joy of life, then you try to overcome that fear by learning the techniques. Now, however, I still get panicked at the sight of a policeman in uniform. The fear of police remained. Now, my uncle came to my rescue. He got me dressed as a police inspector in one of his plays. I commanded many policemen and scolded them for misbehaving with the common people. I learned that policemen were also humans and not demons. Police protect and help us to maintain law and order. Thank God I have overcome all my fears now. So this is how every student might have his or her own story to develop here. Now in this question we are actually testing the creative skill, imagination and creation of students. That's all for this video. I hope I have been able to explain the lesson to you all nicely, and if you like the lesson, please subscribe to it and like it. Thank you. Bye bye.